it takes time before it rolls out.
You're live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We've come in early tonight because I want to talk a little bit before we get started and give people an opportunity to get here. So, I'm Mr. Natural. Welcome to Mr. Natural's Music School. This video tonight is going to be sponsored by Mr. Natural's Music School here in Haight-Ashbury, California. We're in San Francisco. And you'll see here, this is a book that I wrote called Music Theory Decoded Strictly by the Numbers. You can find this on Amazon.com. I guess it's around $30 or so. And you can also find it on Lulu.com, which is the press who actually published this for us. So this book is a music theory book. It has everything you need to know about music theory. If you're going to a Berkeley School of Music, or you're in some college or university somewhere and you're taking a course in music, it's usually about 2 years long, 4 years if you want to get your PhD, and this will help take you right through it. I've had a lot of people write me emails saying, Mr. Natural, I was having a hard time in school. I bought your book and you simplified it and made it easy for me. There's also a gizmo in here which we call the intervalometer. And the intervalometer is basically, it's a ruler, this thing. Just think of it as a ruler for intervals. So instead of a ruler with inches, this is a ruler that has the intervals laid out. And this, you cut this out, paste it together, and set it behind the black keys on your piano. Now, when this video is over, we will post a free link to this intervalometer in the description below. It won't be during this thing, but afterwards we're going to post a little description of what went on here, and there will be a link so you can get an intervalometer for free. If you get one, paste it together, put it behind the black keys of your piano, set it up so the number 1 is on C, you'll see that all the numbers line up with the white keys or the key of C. And if you move the number 1 to any other key, for instance, if you move it to F sharp, it'll then show you the major scale in F sharp. The other side of the slider is red, and the red side of the slider has the natural minor scale, also the harmonic minor and the melodic minor. So they're all explained in here. And in here, another thing we did when we wrote this book is, I don't like books where you read books in the first chapter, and when you get to the 8th chapter, they start using abbreviations and things, and they expect you to have read the first chapter. We don't do that. What we do is each and every single subject, we start right from the beginning and we explain right from the beginning over and over and over without any abbreviations. So it's in English and you'll actually be able to understand what I'm saying. So now that it's 7:30, we hope people are here. So please go buy my book. This is the only way we are supported. I do not have any kind of a deal with YouTube to get money here. Besides, I don't have that many subscribers, if you'll notice. I've been online since 2005 and have managed to avoid getting subscribers until now. But now I'm at an age where I feel sooner or later all this thing has to be, this legacy that I've created has to be passed on to the world, or it's going to be lost. And so I've been putting it on YouTube lately, and now for the first time in my life, I've been beating my drum like the Salvation Army to try to get people to come to this channel and watch what we're doing, and to start buying my book, and to ask for users to sign up and subscribe. So please subscribe, push that little bell icon, and it'll send you a notification or an email telling you when we're going to be on, or if we're doing something in the future. Sometimes it'll send you a little reminder of when we're going to be on next. We're on every Thursday from 7:30 on, either weekly or bi-monthly. So I'll do like every 2 weeks or every week, depending on what's going on around here. So let's get to what I'm talking about tonight. Tonight, I'm going to show you a way of memorizing the number of sharps and the number of flats in every single key signature. And we're not going to stop with just the 7 sharps and the 7 flats. What we're going to do is we're going to go way beyond that. We're going to go up to 14 sharps and up to 14 flats. Why, Mr. Natural? Because they're there and they occur. What they do is there are keys on the piano that no one reads in and no one plays in that have double sharps in them already. And there are keys that have double flats in them, and nobody plays in those keys or reads in those keys. So I'm going to show you that they actually do exist, and then what I'm going to do is show you a little trick that I use to be able to memorize all the sharps and flats. Let's move over to the blackboard here first. All right, so the first thing I want to explain here on the blackboard is here's the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If we're looking at the scale as a melody, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. There is no 8. There is no octave because do and do, or 1 and 1, are the same. From here, the pattern takes off and goes high 2, high 3, high 4, or it can go low 7, low 6, low, etc., etc. What we do is I usually put a line over it for the higher octaves, and we put a line under it so we can actually show with the numbers 3 octaves. Now, however, if you are looking at it harmonically, then what happens is you have to have 2 octaves, because harmony goes over 2 octaves. So we have C to C and C to C again, and then the enumeration goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then the C would be 8. Then you'd have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and it goes up to 15. So if this C is on a line, that C will be on a space, and this one is on a line again. So when we get to 15, we have returned back to this being C on the line again. So harmonically, we would number it all the way up to 15. Now, if you will take a look, the number 9 here, harmonically, is the same as the number 2, melodically. So often people, when they refer to adding a ninth to their scale, what they do is they play the 2. They play, in the key of C, they would play D. And putting a D in there, playing that second step of the scale, is a ninth, if you're adding that into the chord, because chords are over 2 octaves, okay? Now, and this is key to what we're doing today. This ninth is key to what we're going to be doing, right? So the next thing I want to explain is that when you're writing out the alphabet or you're writing out a scale, the scale always uses the alphabet letters in order. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And there are no skips at all. I cannot go E, F, F sharp, G. I can't double a letter. I can't have G, G flat, A. That doesn't happen in the spelling. I can't go from F to A to C. What happens if I'm skipping like that, that's usually a third or an open chord. So every time I go from one note to the next note or one letter name to the next, I must be doing the alphabet in order and not skip any of the alphabet names. Now that's crucial to what we're going to be doing today. So I have down here a little piano thing, and just for the heck of it, we're going to look at what we call major, now let me do it this way, major seconds. Now, a minor second is when you go from something like D to D sharp or D to E flat. These black keys have 2 names. If I'm going up, I usually look at these as sharps. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. If I'm coming down, the name convention is for flats. So this would be C, B, now this would be called B flat, A flat, G flat, F, E flat, D flat, C. So if we're going up, every half step going up would be called a sharp, and if we're coming this way in the scale, coming down, then we would call these flats. So whether these black keys are sharp or flat actually is dependent on what direction you're moving. That's crucial to what I'm going to be teaching tonight as well. Now, we have a thing in music known as the 5 of the 5. People call this the secondary dominant. Now, what do we mean by a 5? Let's say I'm in the key of C, and I think of the C as my 1 chord. If I count from C up 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to G, G is the 5 of C, or we'd call that the dominant chord of C. If I were to count from C up again, let's say start here, C, and count up 5, so let's start at G and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you'll see I now wind up here on the 9th. And if I were to count from the 9th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I wind up on the 13th, etc., etc. So the 5 of the 5, or what's called a secondary dominant, is when we count up 5 notes and then we count up another 5 notes. 2 sets of 5 is called the dominant, or secondary dominant. And this is crucial because what happens when you're creating the secondary dominants is an interesting pattern that I noticed many years ago. If I'm going from C and counting up to G, then counting from G up to D, D winds up being not just the 9th, but it's the 2nd step of the scale. It's a whole step up. Now, what is a whole step and what's a half step? A half step is called a minor second. People usually call it 2 with a minus in front of it, or 2 with a minus behind it, or 2 with a small m, minor second. And that is when we go from something like D to the next flat or sharp. And if I go from this flat or sharp up to the E, I've gone a minor second. Minor second between E and F. F to F sharp, minor second. F sharp to G, minor second. G sharp to A, minor second. Okay? What's happening here is this 9th is a whole step, or what we call a major second. So now, if we have 2 major, what happens is that is 2 chromatic tones. So going from C to C sharp to D is a whole step, or 2 chromatic tones is a major second. If I go from D up 2 chromatic tones, I'm on E. If I go from E up 2 chromatic tones, I do not wind up on F, I wind up on F sharp. And if I go up 2 chromatic tones from here, I go to G sharp. And 2 chromatic tones here, I wind up on A sharp. And we're going to use this major second, which is the secondary dominant, the 9th, to look for a pattern. Now it turns out when you go from C to G, what happens is we add 1 sharp. And when you go from G to D, we add another sharp, so D has 2 sharps. 2 sharps in it. So that means that if I go from C to D, the key C flat to the key of D, or I go up a major second, what's happened is that has 2 sharps. Well, what if I go from the secondary dominant of D? D up 5 letters gives us A. See? D up to A is 5 letters. And then if we go from A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we wind up on E. So the secondary dominant of D is E. That is the 9th of the chord. It is also the 2nd of the scale, and you will see again going from D chromatically to a minor second to a major second. So going from D to E is a major second. And what happens is this D has 2 sharps. The A, we add 1 more sharp, so it has 3 sharps. And the E, we adding 2 sharps. So there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 sharps. So if I go up a major second, that key signature is going to have 2 more sharps. Now what happens if I follow through on that? What if I go from E to F sharp? Well, what happens is the key of F sharp will have 2 more sharps than the E has. And if I go from F sharp to G sharp, that G sharp is going to have 2 more sharps than the F sharp has. And if I go from G sharp to A sharp, that A sharp is going to have 2 more sharps than that. And if I go from Now here's where it gets funny. Remember, alphabet in order. If I go from A sharp to B sharp, it looks like I'm back on C, doesn't it? But we would not call it that. The spelling of it demands that we call it some kind of B, because this was A sharp. So going up a major second from A sharp, this is called B sharp. Now if I go up another major second from C, I'm going here to there, it looks like D, but we don't call it D, we have to call it some kind of C. And it's not C sharp, because that would be 1 sharp. I'm actually moving up 2 sharps. So this key here would be called C sharp sharp, or C double sharp. And this is where the double sharps start to come in. If I go from C double sharp to the next one, this one, I would call it D double sharp. And if I went from here to there, since this has a sharp on it already, and I have to add another sharp to it, we would call it E double sharp, which is the same as F sharp sharp. And so the F winds up having 2 sharps on it. Now, when we do key signatures, you'll see later that the key signatures that we're doing normally only have up to 7 sharps and 7 flats. And I'll show you how that's not necessarily true. The truth is, in music theory, we can take this to infinity beyond. For instance, in the key of A double sharp, A double sharp, A sharp sharp, A double sharp has 17 sharps. There are 4 double sharps and 3 triple sharps. So I can theoretically continue on with this and get triple sharps, I can get quadruple sharps, and I can just go on and on and on with this spelling game ad infinitum, ad infinity. Now, you only have to memorize up to 7 sharps and 7 flats normally, but I'm going to show you that there are a couple keys on the keyboard that actually exist that nobody writes in keys in and nobody plays. And let's do this double dominant again. What if I go from E up 5 notes to B, and then from B up 5 to F sharp? So I'm going from E to F sharp, you see, a major second. So a major second is essentially 2 chromatic tones. Now on the guitar, that would be 2 frets. Each fret on the guitar is one half step, or a chromatic tone. So turn the camera back over this way for a second and let me show you something. Here is C. If I go up 2 frets, that's D. If I go up 2 frets, that's E. Now this is F, but if I go up 2 frets, I'm on F sharp, 2 frets, G sharp, 2 frets, B sharp, and then
sharp.
2, pardon?
A.
I'm sorry, A sharp, and then B sharp. Right? So what's happening is every two frets, I've gone up a major second. And it follows this pattern where we go C to D, D to E, E to F sharp to G sharp to B sharp to C sharp, C double sharp, D double sharp, etc., etc., and so forth. If I am on G, which is the open string here, and I go up 2 frets, I'm on A. If I go from A up 2 frets, I'm on B. If I go from B up 2 frets, I'm on C sharp. If I go from up 2 more, I'm on D sharp, etc., etc. And the spelling holds true where we're going A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay? Let's go back to the board. So what's happening here is we are creating what is known as a whole tone scale. And if we were to follow the sharps and flats on the whole tone scale, it turns out that every time I go from one position to the next position a major second away, I'm adding 2 sharps. And if I go up again, I'm adding 2 sharps, 2 sharps, 2 sharps, 2 sharps, 2 sharps, 2 sharps, always 2 sharps, even number. If I start on G, which has a sharp already, then what happens if I go up to the A, I'm going to have the 1 plus 2 more sharps, which is 3. And if I go from the A up a major second to B, I'm going to have the 3 sharps plus 2 more, 5. And B has 5 sharps. So we can use this pattern, again, ad infinitum, into doing double sharps and triple sharp spelling. Vice versa. If we come down, for instance, from C down a whole step to B flat, we have 2 flats. If I go from the B flat down to A flat, we add 2 more flats, so that would be 4 flats. If we go from the A flat to G flat, that would be adding 2 more flats, so we would have 6 flats, etc., etc., 6 flats. Then here we would have 8 flats. Then here, 10 flats. And then here, 12 flats, etc., etc. If I start with F, F has 1 flat. So if I go from F down to E flat, I'm going to take the 1 flat, add 2 flats to it, that would be 3 flats. So E flat has 3 flats. If I go down another major second to D flat, I'm adding 2 more flats. So that would be 5 flats. If I do here, again, we would have 7, and etc., etc. So what's happening is because we start with 1, we add 2, 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 etc., etc. Okay? So let's see how this thing works. First of all, I want to show you that the reason sharps, double sharps and double flats actually do exist, and they do actually exist on the keyboard as we know it. There are 3 keys on the keyboard that are often overlooked. You'll notice here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sharps, and that's as far as most key signatures go. They do not go beyond the 7. Now what happens is if I were to go from the B sharp here and add another sharp, it would wind up on the F. But since the F is already sharped, I'd have to double sharp it. And by the way, the double sharp looks like an X with dots in it, or it looks like an X with little things on the end like this. This is what a double sharp looks like when we draw it. For flats, we do not have a special symbol, so they would actually draw a flat, flat for the flats. So let's take a look at a key that exists on the keyboard that is not covered, goes beyond these 7 flats and 7 sharps. Here is G sharp. If I were to spell the key of G sharp, what happens is it has 8 sharps. And so the key signature is not adequate to spell the G sharp, yet I can spell the G sharp key by saying G sharp, A sharp, then B, right, etc., etc. And I can wind up doing this, and when I do this, I'm going to wind up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 normal sharps and 1 double sharp, because when this goes back to the F line, I'm double sharping the F. And if I add another sharp, I'm going to wind up double sharping the C. And if I do that, I wind up on another key called D sharp. Now, most people know E flat. And they know that E flat has 3 flats. If you subtract that from 12, you wind up with 9, and that would be the number of sharps there would be for the enharmonic spelling of that. Here, G sharp is also A flat, right? A flat has 4 flats. So if I subtract the 4 from 12, I wind up with 8 sharps. So that's one way to do this. So G sharp actually exists on the keyboard. There is a spelling for it, but because the key signature only goes up to 7 sharps, I would have to add a double sharp on my F sharp in order to get the 8 sharps to spell the G sharp. D sharp has 9 sharps. So again, I can't spell that key with just these 7 sharps. I have to go further than that. So what happens is I double sharp the F, I double sharp the C, C double sharp gives us the 9 sharps. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regular sharps and 2 double sharps in order to spell D sharp. Now here's the most overlooked. Everyone knows that B flat has 2 flats. Well, subtract 2 from 12 and what do we wind up with? 10. So it turns out that A sharp has 10 sharps. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 single sharps and 1, 2, 3 double sharps. And these actually exist on the piano, and no one writes any piece of music in these keys because the key signatures that we have only goes up to 7 sharps. But I can write music in G sharp, I can write music in D sharp, and I can write music in A sharp. And as a matter of fact, if I go A sharp sharp or A double sharp, I would wind up with 17 sharps. So there's no end to how far this theory can go. Now, what I've done here is I've shown you the justification for a very simple pattern. If we start on the C and we go up a major second, D is going to have 2 sharps. If we go up a major second, E is going to have 4 sharps. If we go up to F sharp, it's going to have 6. If we go to G sharp, it's going to wind up with 8. If we go to A sharp, we're going to wind up with 10. And if I go to B sharp, we're going to wind up with 12 sharps. And if I go to C double sharp, we're going to wind up with 14 sharps. So C, D, E, F sharp, A sharp, G sharp, A sharp, C sharp, B sharp, and C double sharp. All right? So that gives us 14 sharps. And here is what that key signature would look like. 7 double sharps is 14 sharps, and this would be the key of C double sharp, or it would be written as C, X with dots in it. C double sharp has 14 sharps. Now what happens if we want to get, those are all even. What if we want to get odd numbers? Well, what we do is we go from C up 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to G, which gives us 1 sharp, G. And now what we do is we go up a major second to A to add 2 more sharp, so that would be 3 sharps, A. We go up a major second to B, and that would be 2 more sharps, so that would be 5 sharps. And then we go from B to C sharp, and C sharp would be 7 sharps. And then if we go from the C sharp up to D sharp is going to have 9 sharps. And if we go from D sharp to E sharp, then what happens is that's going to have 11 sharps. And if we go from E sharp to F double sharp, we're going to wind up with 13 sharps. So again, we start with 1 sharp, we add 2, which is 3, 5, C sharp, 7, D sharp, 9, E sharp, 11, F double sharp, 13. Simple pattern. So we can get all the even numbers by starting with C and going up through the whole tone scale. If we start on G with 1 sharp and go up again the whole tone scale, then what happens is we get all the odd numbers of sharps. And as you can see, there'll be 7 evens, and there'll be 7 odds to give us all 14 sharps. Now, for flats, it's exactly the opposite. And again, we go through first the evens, and then we'll go through the odds. So, if we start with C, and we go down to B flat, we're going to wind up with 2 flats. If we go from B flat down to A flat, we're going to wind up with 4 flats. If we go from A flat to G flat, we're going to wind up with 6 flats. If we go from G flat to F flat, we're going to wind up with 8 flats. If we go from F flat to E double flat, remember we have to go to the letter name E, and it's a major second down from the F flat, so we call that E double flat. So E double flat has 10 flats. And from the E double flat, we go down to D double flat, and that is 12 flats. And then we go from D double flat to C double flat, you see, which brings us back to what would normally be the enharmonic B flat, and that we call C double flat, and we wind up with 14 flats. So here again, we're going down the whole tone scale, and it's giving us 2 flats each time, and you can see all the even flats. Now, how do we get the odd? Well, we start on F, which has 1 flat. And then we go from F down a whole major second to F to E flat. And E flat will have 3 flats. So we're just adding 2. From E flat, we go down to D flat, and we add 2 more, which gives us 5 flats. And now from D flat, we go C flat, right? And that's going to give us 7 flats. We go from C flat to B double flat. So B flat gives us 9 flats. We go from B double flat to A double flat, and that gives us 11 flats. And then we go from A flat flat to G flat flat, which brings us right back to F, which gives us 13 flats. So here you can see B flat, 2 flats, A flat, 4 flats, G flat, 6 flats, F flat, 8 flats, E double flat, 10, D double flat, 12, C double flat, 14, F1, E flat, 3, D flat, 5, C flat, 7. That's as far as the flats go. And then we keep on going. B double flat, 9, A double flat, 11, G double flat, 13. So there are our 14 flats. So it would look like this. B double flat, E double flat, A double flat, D double flat, G double flat, C double flat, and F double flat. So that is our whole scale, and you'll see that going down through the major seconds gives us 2 flats. If we start with 1 flat going down major seconds, then we're adding the odds, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. So to sum this up, I've given you the reasons why we're doing this. the secondary dominants is what's creating this pattern. But very, very simply, what's happening is we are simply going up the whole tone scale, or we're coming down the whole tone scale. We start on G with 1 sharp, go up the whole tone scale, it gives us all the odd sharp numbers. And if we start on F, which has 1 flat, and go down the whole tone scale, that gives us all the odd flat numbers. So that's the way you can memorize up to 14 sharps and 14 flats, ladies and gentlemen. And you will not see this taught anywhere else that I know of. And for me, what I do is I just think most people can do the whole tone. C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C double sharp, D double sharp. Done. Most people can go in the other direction. C, B flat, A flat, G flat, F flat, E double flat, D double flat, A double flat, G double flat, done. And you got all the odds. All right? So, back to me. So thank you very much for hanging in here for this half hour to see this amazing thing. And I hope you realize that not only can there be double sharps and double flats, but the truth is if I continue on and say A double sharp, G double sharp, I'm going to wind up with triple sharps in those key signatures. And if I go in the other direction and say E triple flat, I'm going to wind up with triple flats. Or D triple flat, I'm going to wind up with triple flats. And all that happens is when we get to 15, remember, when we get harmonically to 15, this is the same as 1. This is on a line. This C winds up being on a space, and then this one comes right back to a line again. So what happens is because we have 7 letter names, it's an odd number, and C moves from a line to a space back to a line again. And over 15 numbers. This is also why we get chords that are called 9th chords, 11th chords, 13th chords. Even though we have a 14th, and we could have a 14th chord, I don't know of anyone that spells one, but we don't have a 15th because the whole system resets back to the default of 0. Okay. And going up in major seconds, going up major seconds, we're adding 2 sharps at a time, and going down major seconds, we're adding 2 flats at a time. And if we start with 1 sharp in the key of G, and then go up, we're going to get 3, 5, we're going to get the odd numbers. And if we start with F that has 1 flat, and go down, we're going to get the odd number flats. So that's it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think you'll find any other teacher anywhere in the world that teaches this, and anyone who knows how to spell the whole tone scale can memorize these sharps and flats. That's why I'm able to memorize the spellings up to, and by the way, I can go up to 21 sharps and 21 flats in my head. And I can spell these things correctly and get the scales, the major scales, all 35 spellings for the major scale correctly off the top of my head. So people who say, Mr. Natural, why do you do the numbers? Why don't you just do ABC like everybody else? Well, one, the ABC is not movable, and if I change the key, I have to rewrite all the ABCs for a song. And if I'm using the numbers, it moves. It's because I looked at intervals and because I took intervals out harmonically to its nth degree that I began to see these other patterns with the ABC, and I realized that some of these ABC things that are very complicated wind up being very simple numeric patterns, which are very easy to memorize. So that's it for our lesson tonight. We'll be seeing you again either next week or the week after that, where I'm going to start teaching you how to read music on the staff by interval. All you guitar players out there now, who for the last 15 years have been switching over to teach your guitar players how to play by interval on the guitar, I indict you all for not being able to read music. And if you want to see how to take that intervals, those interval patterns that you're teaching on guitar, and learn how to read music on the staff by guitar, watch this next 10 or 11 lessons that I do where I'm going to explain the theory that I've developed to teach people to read by interval on the staff, which turns out not to be a left brain thing where you have to memorize up to the, what happens is once we know where one is, we can throw all the sharps and all the flats out, we can throw out all the clefs, we can throw everything away and just use our eyeball to see these intervals. So please, stick with us and we'll see you soon. Now, good night. Wait a moment.